Cool, now we know where our files are and we know how to make them, so let's see if we can put some JavaScript code in our trains.js file and get something to execute. Let's put a few console-style expressions inside our trains.js file just to see if we get a good response from our compiler. Uh-oh, error. What's up? Well, the compiler does not like how we have entered our statements into the file. We need something a little different so it can understand our file representation. We have to have a way to differentiate between the statements themselves. So here's our console entry, right? If we were declaring a variable for trains operational, we would just declare it and say that it equals 8, and it would be ready to go, and everything would be great. But if we put multiple console statements to execute inside one file, the compiler looks at it like this, which is just back-to-back garbage nonsense, and it has no idea where your statement begins, where it ends, or what to do. So we need a way to tell the compiler we're done making this particular statement. Enter the semicolon. The semicolon is very cool. We like it. So here we have what a normal console entry would be for our trains operational variable, and the only thing we would need to do to tell the compiler in a file that we are done making that statement is to throw a semicolon right on the end of that statement. It says, hey, we're done with this particular expression, go ahead and do that before even looking at the next one. So now, if we had a woot for semicolons file and we put all of our statements in there, each of them separated by a semicolon, we would get a fantastic blank. What? What's going on? Why didn't we get anything? We just put all that stuff in there with our semicolons, it executed the statements just fine, but we got nothing. And that's because everything that happened with those statements happened inside the compiler, and the compiler never printed anything out for the user. We need a way to get the results of our computations in the compiler out to the user. So in order to print from a file to the console, we'll use this cool method called the console.log method. It's going to output the result of your code operations from your file to the console. So let's say in our train system we had 12 total trains, as we know, but we also have today 8 operational trains. If we wanted to build a message for the user on the console that told them how many running trains we have today, we could use the console.log method and place an expression that builds a string inside its parameters. This would log out or print the contents of the string to the browser's console, and notice that there are no more quotation marks around that string. Now we can place any expression that we want inside of a console.log method. We can even ask if the trains operational is equal to the total trains, and since it's not, console.log will say false. So now we kind of have a way to get our messages printed to the screen so that the user can see them and they won't stay just inside the compiler itself. We can use console.log inside of our trains.js file to print out every running train. So let's do that. Here's every last one of the running trains. Wow, and let's see what we get. Every single one prints in order, and we see exactly how many trains are running and which ones are running. So here we have our index.html file, and we know that that references our trains.js JavaScript source file. And if we open our index.html file, we can see the generic JavaScript Express header that we stuck into our HTML file before, but we don't see any of our running train printouts. Why is that? We put our semicolons in, right? Well, remember that our console.log method prints its messages only to the console. So all we would do here to see our results is go up to the menu and open our JavaScript console, which we already know how to do. And there on the left, you can see our running train printouts exactly as we wanted them to be. You might ask what these notations are over here on the right-hand side of our log, and that would be an excellent question. These are indicators that show which files caused the current line of output on the left, along with the exact line within the file that caused the output. This is very useful when you have a lot of code in a source file, or even multiple source files, and you need to pinpoint how or why certain printouts appeared. Now we have combined semicolons and the console.log method to produce each message for each train. And you can see that the console obeys conveniently and produces every single message that we wanted. So let's look at our current train status system. We have an index.html file that will load all of the HTML code, and once it's loaded, it will go and fetch the trains.js file, and inside that trains.js file, it will execute a whole bunch of our JavaScript code to get our trains messages printed to the user. Guess what? This code kind of sucks too. Womp womp. Why? Because what if there were 124 trains? Would you want to type every single one of those console.log messages into your trains.js file? I think not. And we need a way to solve this repetitive code issue. And that will be in the next section. See you soon. HTML that can be used multiple times every time. Multiple times. It's like, so how do we show